the recording, not their names. I mean, I don't have it in front of me. So first, we learn Le'ilu Nishmat Avigdor Chai Avram ben Rachalea Meir Tzvi. Also, Le'ilu Nishmat, the 5 that were recovered, 5 bodies: Ravid Katz, Oren Golden, Maya Gorin, Tomer Achimas, and Kirill Brodatsky. Shem Yikom Damam. Okay. Tov. We are in the middle of this long Mishnah, or it's a short one, depending on your printing. Again, it's chapter 2. It could be Mishnah 9, 10, 11, but we're in the middle of it where it starts with the words, Amar lehem tze'u ezohi derech ra'ah shitrachek mimenu hadam. Go and look and see what are some of the bad character traits that one should avoid and distance himself from. And again, it could be a number of possible mishnayot here that you may have, like 9, 10, 11, possibly 12. Wow. Yeah, because this one is long, is chopped up by some printings into 3 or 4. Okay. So it lists now the not the opposites, and we're going to see that in a minute, but lists some of the bad things, the bad character traits. We talked about the 5 that were mentioned that were good. Now we're talking about the 5 negative. Rabbi Lezer Omer ayin ra'ah, a bad eye. Doesn't mean an evil eye. That's ayin hara, which is a difference. Word, again, I've told you before that in Hebrew, something you have 2 of in your body, like your ears, your eyes, is nekeva. So that's ayin ra'ah, not ayin ra. But why is it therefore ayin hara? It's a different topic. So having a bad eye, meaning always finding the negative. I know people in my life, I've known people like this my whole life, who will see a perfectly, you don't see it in Israel, but a perfectly manicured lawn. Beautiful, every blade green, perfect height. And there's one blade of grass in the far corner that's brown. That's all they see. And it's a sad way to live through life. So Ayn Ra'ah, Rabbi Yoshua Mer Chavera, a bad friend. Well, what's he your friend? Why is he your friend in the first place? Or why is she your friend if he's a bad person? So sometimes people pretend to be your friend for selfish reasons, because they might need something, because they may have started off as good and then things have deteriorated. So the word of this statement, or the question was, what are the midot lehitrachik from? So when you do realize something like that, you want to distance yourself from somebody like that. The opposite being you want to attach yourself to somebody who's good. Next, Rabbi Yossi Omer shachenra, a bad neighbor. Again, the same idea we saw in the positives, we see in the negatives. Rabbi Shimon Omer, this is what we're going to have to come back to in a minute, explain. Haloveh ve'eno mishalem. It's a person who, what's a midara? A person who borrows money and doesn't pay it back. Echad haloveh min ha'adam, whether it's a person who borrowed from a person, kiloveh min ha'makom, or a person who borrows from another person, kiloveh min ha'makom baruch hu. It's like he's borrowing from God. Again, this whole last piece I have to explain. Shenemar loveh rasha v'lo yishalem. An evil person who borrows and doesn't pay, it's tzadik chonen v'noten. Rabbi Elazar Omer levra, an evil heart. You harbor inside of you this negative, this hatred, this everything's bad about everything, about people, about life. It's your classic, I don't know what the right word is, but this is the word misanthrope make sense?
Curmudgeon.
Oh, curmudgeon. There you go. There's words you never use. Okay. And then the Mishnah ends by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who these are all of students, ends with the statement that I see the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach about the concept that lev ra is the worst trait. Because everything you all said, whether shachen ra, chaver ra, all fall into the category of lev ra. It's like the umbrella of all these things. So first of all, the first question we have to ask is, what's the necessity of asking this question in the first place? What are the midot ra'ot that one should run away from? If they just told us the good character traits, we should say the opposite, right? So there's a reason why he has to delineate. Because let's take a look at one of those good character traits, and we said that was haro'eh et hanolad, that someone who takes into consideration what will happen as a result of their actions. Now, does that mean if someone doesn't, that's an evil thing? No. I may decide to go to Tel Aviv tomorrow, not necessarily keeping in mind that I'll miss an important meeting, but I didn't keep it in mind. Is that evil of me? It's not evil. So you can't say that the opposite of everything that's good is bad, because it's not true. And I talk about that in general in life. Just because something is good one way doesn't mean the flip side is bad. Matter of fact, as we've talked about both in Mesilat Yesharim and in other classes, we know that the Rambam is famous for what he calls the Shvil HaZahav. You shouldn't be too far this way. You shouldn't be too far that way. He's kind of down the middle. And that's what we strive for in general. But what does this mean? It's not a good thing to borrow and not pay back. But how does that fall into the category, same grouping as the evil heart, a bad neighbor, a bad friend? Is bad, but it's just an action. It's one thing. It's not an overall perspective of something. So we'll look at a couple of possibilities here. It's like gezela. It is a form of gezela, of theft, but even more so. Okay, because I'm going to actually use that to start with. It's even more than gezela. It's also gnevat da'at. You're also, gnevat da'at literally means stealing someone's thought or mind, that you trick somebody. Because a person of loveve eno meshalem here in this Mishnah, according to the Mefarshim, is talking about somebody who borrows money and knew they couldn't pay it back. They knew up front they couldn't pay it back. I've had people over the years, not big money, people borrow, a couple hundred shekel here. I'm not talking about, hey, you have an extra 5 shekel. 100, 200, 300 shekel. And in my head, always, I'm saying to myself, if they don't pay it back, they don't pay it back. It's just the way it is. I don't want to, my conscience, that because of me, someone has a problem up in Shammai. It's okay. One time, I would make sure Andy's dead on. Okay. Oh, she is. Hey, Ange. Okay. One time I did something, let's say, that was a little putting myself way out there to co-sign on somebody's loan. It wasn't a loan. It was a temporary thing from a gemach. There was someone was borrowing a chunk of money, big chunk of money, and wanted me to co-sign. It's the only time in my life I ever did that. And I was shaking for 30 days till he paid it back. Sorry. Anyways, moving along. See you in my office at noon. So that's some possible. I'm going to read to you, Rav Steinsaltz mentions in his Sefer, his commentary on Pirke Avot, which came out after he passed away. They're still publishing things all the time in his works. I want to read to you 3 comments. One is Rashi, one is Rabbeinu Yonah, and one is someone named Rabbi Yahu Haditzari. Now, honestly had never heard of him. So I looked at him up and found that he was, where was it? He was a Rav in Saragossa, in the 15th century. And he wrote a Perush on Pirke Avot that became well known because of the Abarbanel. The Abarbanel who came after him made it famous. And that's not, by the way, that's not unusual. We saw that with Mesilat Yesharim. When the Ramchal, Chaim Lutzato, wrote the Mesilat Yesharim, it was barely a known thing. Only people wanted to run him out of the city, and they did run him out of the city, and it's only a couple centuries later that it became popular, because of the beginning of the founding of the Musar movement by Rav Yisrael Salanter. Anyways, so Rashi says as follows: if a person who borrows money doesn't return the debt, the question here is not just what does it mean that a loveh, borrower, did return, that's a bad thing, but it also says, notice the words are, when a person borrows money from a person, it's like he's borrowing from God. Why? So Rashi said that if you don't pay it back, somehow Hashem's going to level the playing field to make sure that that person gets his money back. It'll be in God's hands. So therefore, when a person borrows and doesn't pay back, so as it were, he's borrowing from God, who will return the debt to the loaner. The pasuk is quoted, Hashem's called a tzaddik. Why? Because he gives back that money. So why is it considered a bad character trait to borrow and not pay back? Because basically you're doing is saying you're using God as your back. Don't worry about it. God will take care of it for me. That's terrible, right? Imagine you have a kid who's rich, and his father's rich, but the parents have cut him off. A kid whose father is very rich. Oh. Okay? And you misunderstood what I said, I guess. Yeah, but the parents don't, and so but people think he's rich because he's so and so's child, and he's going around and borrowing and all. I'm thinking in his head, mom and dad will cover it, no problem. Okay, that's terrible. It destroys the relationship. Whatever was already bad, it's even worse from that. So that's Rashi's perspective. Rabbeinu Yonah. Now, I think it's worthwhile digressing for a second because, again, when you talk about commentaries on Pirke Avot, it's good to know a little bit about, if it's a one-off is one thing, but here you're talking about Rabbeinu Yonah has a lot of commentary on Pirke Avot. He wrote a book called Sharei Tshuva, and it's a classic work about repentance. And the reason he wrote it is, and you'll learn about this soon in the next few weeks in the history class, is that the Rambam's work, especially when he wrote Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide for Perplexed, threw the Jewish world into a tizzy, to the point that they ended up burning many, many works of the Rambam. About a century later, there was a public burning of the Talmud in France. France, they're always good for the Jews. A public burning of the Talmud. They burned 24 cartloads of the Talmud. Now, keep in mind that it was handwritten, all handwritten. There's no printing press. So imagine you have a set of Gemara. Say it's 20, the original set, let's say it's 20 volumes. Not about the shot and steam, which is 20, which is 70 something, because it's all the multiple volumes per Gemara. Just let's say it's 20. And 24 cartloads, they're piled high. And Rabbeinu Yonah saw that as a punishment to those people who burned the Rambam's work. And he went from community to community to community to apologize posthumously to the Rambam. And he wrote a book about tshuva because of that. That's called Sharei Tshuva. When I was first introduced to it in my freshman year in high school, it was just another book to scribble in. What did I know from anything? But it's if you don't have it, it's worth having. Even if you just look at it once in a while, pick it up a little bit. In any case, so Rabbeinu Yonah says as follows: he's bir shahad gashahi. The point here is shelamrot shadam she'en lo ma sheyachzir patur b'dinei adam. Theoretically, if I borrow money, now we're not talking about the time of the Beit HaMikdash or anything where there was concept of
referring to someone who knowingly knows he can't. It's not somebody who
right. So it could be no one right. It could be someone who, it could be both. The worst is someone who knowingly knows that he can't pay it back. Okay, that's the worst. The one who then is in Mitzukah, he's in dire straits and now he can't pay it back. So what I was saying is that at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, they would have what we called an indentured servant. You'd be sold into slavery, and slavery in Judaism is very different than what we picture of the African slavery. And he would work off his debt that way. There's no such thing like that in most of the world nowadays. Unfortunately, there is still something like that elsewhere, in some parts. But so he says that even though a person borrows, technically, if he doesn't have the money, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. He doesn't have any assets. There's nothing you can do. Can't garnish his wages. The guy's a bum. So he's patur. He's patur from paying it back, but he's patur midinei adam. What does that mean? There are two courts. There's yeshiva shel mal, yeshiva shel mat. There's the heavenly court, the heavenly Beit Midrash, and there's the earthly one. So there's a concept in Judaism known as patur midinei adam, v'chayav b'dinei shamayim. That you're, as far as like taking him to court, he'll be found innocent. But in God's court, you got to make it right. So he says like this: that the point here is that even though the person may be patur b'dinei adam, avol mitchayev b'dinei shamayim, but he's still liable as far as Hashem is concerned. He shouldn't have borrowed it in the first place. Now there we're talking about a situation where he didn't have the money. This is what it means that he's borrowing from God. Halimud me'ah pasuk. Okay, fine. And the final commentary, Rabbi Matitya Yitzhari, he wrote, "Shemuvano shel halaveh min hamakom," that the idea that you borrowed from Hashem, hu she'adam oseh dvar avera, the person does a sin. Halimud me'ah pasuk hu shehaloveh ve'ino meshalem nechshav l'rasha. He says, no, it's not the right thing to do. You're a Russia. When you do something that you know you can absolutely not, why are you a Russia? Now, if I walk up to someone and I punch them in the nose, I have to pay that person for their pain and suffering and lost wages and all these others, 5 things you have to pay for, and you make the person, quote, whole again. But when you borrow and you know you can't pay back, it's even worse than gneva. It's worse than stealing. Why? Because if you get caught, okay, you'll pay it back. You pay kefil, you'll pay double depending on the situation, or 4 or 5 times depending on what you stole. Here you stole, there's no kefil, there's no double payment. There is no 4 or 5 times for the animal you may have stolen. So you become something that can't be fixed in that case. You become a rasha. And that's why he says, according to this opinion, Rabbi Matityahu Yitzhari, that you are falling into that category of midara. You're puzzled, okay, if it's short.
You're deceiving. You're deceiving.
It's deceptive practice. It's deceptive practice. You've physically taken something from somebody. You emotionally hurt this person. There's a whole bunch of things, but I'm going to continue though. Deeper
You're
one.
doing
Okay.
a favor to the person. The Russian side when he conceals it without the person.
Okay.
He's doing it with a smile and looking you in the face.
Let's take a look.
But again, I mean, maybe he's really been Mitzukah.
He could look again for person. No. Okay, wait. You're right. Wait. You're right. When a person borrows money and has something that they think they can pay it back, and then they fall on hard times, we're not talking about that. If a person is in dire straits and they borrow, and the one that is doing the lending is told, look, I'm in deep trouble here. I may not be able to. That's fine, as long as they know up front. It's when it's deceptive. Okay? Let's look at the next Mishnah, which I don't know what number it is, and it starts with the words Hem amru shlosha dvarim. Now I'm curious, in your printings, does it say Hem amru shlosha dvarim, or just say shlosha dvarim? Okay, so this is a mistake. That's what I thought. That's the first time I found a printing error in Kahati. Okay. Now, we've talked about this long Mishnah beforehand. 5 Rabbanim, 5 things that each of them each one had said something was a good midah. Then each one said something that was a bad midah. In both cases, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach opinion is the best only because it includes everybody else. And now, from now to the end of the Perek, it's going to give a list of 3s of one of each of these rabbis said. Except it's not 3. That's going to be the problem that we'll come to. Each one of these rabbis said 3 statements. And again, as I've said before, whenever the Mishnah says it's not the only 3 things they said. But these are 3 things that they were known to say, that lessons they want to make sure we're given. Rabbi Elazar Omer. So they start with Rabbi Elazar. May the honor of your friend be as much as you would want for yourself. Don't be quick to anger. And you should do tshuva the day before you die. And you should try to warm yourself by the light of chachamim. This is, I know how to count at least to 10. We're already up to number 4. You should be careful not to get burned by their coal. Their bite is the bite of a fox. And their sting is the sting of a scorpion. And it doesn't mean whispered. It means they're as I say, incantation, huh? Hiss is like the hiss of the saraf. And all of their words are like coals of fire. Wow, who wants to get anywhere near a chacham or a tzaddik now, right? So we're only going to focus on the first part of the Mishnah today, and that's the beginning here. First of all, why is it? I'll eventually get to it. Why is it that he says, "I'm going to tell you 3 things," and he tells us multiple. May your friend's honor be like yours. That's 1. Don't be quick to anger. 2. Do tshuva the day before you die. That's 3. Then warm yourself by the chachamim. That's 4. Why? Okay, so maybe we'll get to that also. I just want to go back a second. I did forget one thing in this prior Mishnah. One of the other reasons that haloveh, a borrower without intent to pay back, is bad is that it is the actual opposite of haro'eh tanolad. Why? Because the ro'eh tanolad means he sees what's going to happen and he takes action appropriately based on that. Here, he'll know, I know if I borrow 1,000 shekel and I have no way to pay it back, I know what the results are going to be. and I still do it. So you're seeing the future, what can be the hashlachot or the ramifications of your action, and you purposely, and they're bad, and you purposely choose that. So that's the kind of an opposite of roy panal. Okay, so I want to go back now to this Mishnah. And first, I do want to answer this question about why does it seem to list a whole bunch of things when he says, I'm going to tell you 3. There's one answer I came across, which I personally am not a big fan of, only because it sounds like it's a cheap way out. Who am I? Okay. And that is that it was that, yes.
I understand the problem with the person that borrows that knows he can't pay it back. But me as the person that he comes to ask for money, I can't really know that. So if I say no to him because I think he can't pay it
Right.
back and I'm wrong, then
So
I'm really.
okay, so if you don't, right, so first of all, your question of, am I doing something wrong by refusing to pay somebody, to give someone a loan, that's its own topic. It's a very long topic, because it says there's a whole section in the Torah which is referred to as patuach tiftach. You shall surely open your hand and give day machsoro. You should give as much as he needs. And then it also says the other extreme, not extreme, the other end is if you give, don't ever give more than 20% of what you are able to give away. But it's a different topic, because that whole idea of, you don't know, if you're going to give someone 50 shekel, okay, hopefully most of us, if we can give 50 shekel, it's not going to hurt us if the guy never pays us back. But if you decide you can give someone a 10,000 shekel loan and you don't do your due diligence, that's on you too. I mean, that's part of your own. You should say, look, I need to have some either counter, someone's going to countersign, or someone's going to be some kind of surety, right? But okay. So now on this Mishnah, one of the opinions is that, why does it say, Rabbi Lezer gives a list of things instead of just 3, is that later on, some of these were added by future Chachamim. Now, even having said that, I feel it's kind of a cheap way out. I'm going to prove myself wrong. Okay. How many prakim are there in Pirke Avot? Right, 6. Okay, but there's really only 5. There's only 5 prakim. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he edited the Mishnah, there were only 5 mishnayot, 5 prakim, 5 chapters of Pirke Avot. The 6th was added centuries later for a very specific reason. You'll notice if you look at it, the beginning of the 6th chapter says, I think Shanu Chachamim Bilshon HaMishnah. Let me just see if I got that one by heart. Let's see. I haven't looked at it in a while. Let's see. No. Shanu Chachamim Bilshon HaMishnah. The rabbis taught in the version of the wording of the Mishnah. It was added centuries later because it became a custom, which we talked about months ago, to read a Perek of Pirke Avot from the Shabbatot between Pesach and Shavuot. So Ashkenazim say it all the way till Rosh Hashanah, Sfaradim just during those weeks in between. But there were only 5 chapters. So once it became the custom in the Middle Ages, they needed to add, I don't know if it's the Middle Ages, I forgot already. They needed to add more, so they had 1 more week's worth of Mishnayot. So it's not a cheapo answer. There were things that were done at some point at later dates. Another possibility, Me'am always tells us that the al tehi noach lichos, don't be so quick to anger, is directly connected to, may your friend's honor be as good, important to you as yours. Why? Because if you're quick to anger, that affects your relationships with people. It affects, now, I've talked about, I don't want to say ad nauseum, but I've talked many, many times about anger. It's one of my favorite talks that I give. I love it. I've given it many times. I've been giving it again, Bezrat Hashem, on Sunday in Karmei Gat, Bezrat Hashem. But it is, and it actually, the talk deals with this particular Mishnah in a different way. But Me'am always says that the al tehi noach lichos is a parenthetical statement. Don't be quick to anger, to help you understand how to be able to be sure that you honor your friend and respect your friend as much as you want to be respected. Because I don't want someone to, I'm just making this up now. I don't want someone to talk to me that way and, quick and short and cut me off and be angry with anything I say. Well, I shouldn't do that to you. So it's not an additional statement, but rather a commentary or an expansion of, may your friend's honor be important to you as your own. This is a also connected, obviously, to, it's not obvious, but same idea, right? It falls in the same category, to love your neighbor as you'd like someone to love you. But the different question would be, is why say al tihi noach lichos? Don't be quick to anger. Just say al tichas. Don't get angry. Because number one, it's not practical. Not practical. Number two, it's not healthy. Number three, it's important. Anger is an important emotion when used properly. It's a very important emotion. You know, one of the reasons we call Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our teacher, and not Moshe Avinu, is because everything we learn from Moshe, not just the Torah, but how to act. As an example, Bnei Yisrael mess up. Okay, when? Which time? Okay, all the 317,000 times. You know, many people say, "Oh, if we lived then, we wouldn't have done that." Trust me, you go with the flow. Unfortunately. So, anyways, the Bnei Yisrael mess up. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on Har Sinai. People saw that Moshe was delayed in coming down. Rashi says, "Bashesh." The 6th hour of the day came. They didn't see him, and the Malach Hamavet or Yetzirah or whatever put the Satan, made it look in the sky like Moshe was lying dead somewhere. And all of a sudden, within a matter of minutes, hey, Moses is gone. Let's make a new god, right? And they make the Egel HaZahav. And as the Kuzari says, it was not Avodah Zarah, idolatry, but Avodah Shehi Zarah. But it was a strange way of serving God. Okay, fine. Now, Moshe is on the way down, and he says, he's talking to Yoshua, says, I hear something. And so Moshe said, Ein kol anot chalushav, ein kol anot gvura, kol anot anochi shomea. It's not a sign, it's not sounds of weakness, it's not sounds of greatness like they won a war, it's just a bunch of rabble rousers, a noise. And he comes down, he sees what the Jews are doing, and he sees and he takes, and Charlton Heston takes the luchot, and he takes them, we know he smashes them, and he makes some people drink from it, and they die. And he's furious, and it says he's angry and all, and unfortunately, Moshe gets punished in Parshat. Right. He hits the rock instead of says Shimun Hamorim, and he gets angry. And one of the 24 reasons that he gets punished is because he showed anger, and it wasn't just he showed anger; it was showing anger at the time of God trying to give something, and he's angry. And he goes up to Hashemayim, to the mountain again. God, come on. Really? I mean, they're an Am Sheolef. They're stiff-necked people. Where's his anger? Where's his anger? So it says that the anger he showed when he came down from the mountain was for Hashem. And it was also Lahamid Panim, to kind of put on a show that people should understand the gravity of what they had done. I've used this example before, possibly in here, when a kid comes home from school and brings a little note that tomorrow at 8:30 you're invited to the principal's office to discuss the fact that your child threw a desk out the window. I did that. Sophomore year, threw a desk on the 2nd story of Yeshiva in Skokie. Don't ask. I didn't get invited to the principal's office. I was living there already. Anyways, so the parents go like, how could you do this? We're so embarrassed. We raised you differently. What are the people going to say? And then you come to the principal's office. Come on, a little Rahmanas. What's the difference? It's the same thing. It's the same case. When you're talking to the person, you want to get a message across. And that anger, even the Rambam says, when you need to use anger, it should be klape chutz. It should only be, not klape, it should be on the outside, but inside you should be calm. Okay, it doesn't work that way for many people. It's very difficult. I know that personally, but at least it's there. So that's why the mission doesn't say it doesn't say al tichas, don't get angry. It says al tinoch lichos. You shouldn't be quick to anger. There's another mission that's going to come up. I forgot exactly which Perek. Well, she'll be the next one. That's how prepared I am. That talks about different stages of anger. People that everything bothers them, nothing bothers them, something in the middle. We'll get to that because anger is a very common topic and thread in whether it's Pirke Avot, in Mesilat Yesharim, Derech Hashem, all these svarim that discuss how to be a good person, a good Jew and a good person. Because as we saw from the Igerat Ramban, we talked about that a few times. The very, very first topic he talks about is anger, and that's where also I am sure that Shakespeare, got many of his ideas that he gave over in some of the soliloquies, like Polonius, if you know what I'm talking about, it's okay. That some of these ideas are straight out of our Sfarim. It's amazing. Anywho, so that's the idea of the anger. Anger plays, as I say, a major role in so much writing, so many books. But what is this business about do tshuva the day before you die? Most people are not prophetic and don't know. Some people, unfortunately, we're coming to an end. They're pretty aware. They're still with it, but they're aware. They understand what's happening to them. Now, since we don't know, the implication, therefore, is do tshuva every day, because God forbid tomorrow could be that person's last day. And then you find that you've been done tshuva. Now, there is a concept that is unbelievable, mentioned in, where's the first place I read it? I think it's in Tanya. I have to remember. I think in Tanya. Okay, are you familiar with double jeopardy is in American law? Double jeopardy. I'm not talking about Alex Trebek, okay, which I love the show. You can't be right. Once you are found innocent, like for example, when I don't know why this popped up, O.J. Simpson was found innocent and in a criminal case, when he walked out of the court, if he had said, I murdered this woman and man, he couldn't be tried again. Once he's found innocent, it's called jeopardy, charged civilly, which he was, and other things, but you cannot be charged for the same crime twice once the case has been, you've been found adjudicated and you've been found innocent. I think it's the Balatanya. It tells us the same idea is in Judaism. Oh, it wasn't a Balatanya. Sorry. It was, and maybe he got it from him. It was Shalom Arush, Chut Shel Chesed, in all his books like Garden of Emunah, Garden of Gratitude, all his books, which are phenomenal. And he says this in Bistei Ya'ar. If a person, because he's talking about doing hitbodedut, spending time alone, talking to God on a daily basis, beyond tefillah. He says that one of the purposes of hitbodedut is that you lishpoch et halev, you pour out your heart. You say what you did wrong yesterday. Look, I'm really sorry. I did this. I wasn't thinking. Yeah, I spoke lashon hara, and I ate that without a bracha. I forgot. I didn't bench. I was just too lazy. When you do that on a specific mitzvah, the door is locked. That's it. You're done. You've done, and now it's not just like, okay, I did this, and this, move on. No, when you really feel that you did something wrong and you are from your heart, you do tshuva, that's it. God doesn't open that book again on that one mitzvah, on that one avera. There's no double jeopardy. If you've already been found innocent now because you wiped the slate clean, you're done. So if a person does that, he says this in the book, if a person does that every single day, when they come to Yom Kippur, they have only one day to atone for. That's incredible to think about. But it has to be since no, absolutely. There is let's see what time is it? Okay, good. There is a book, a small book. Beside, everyone knows the Chafetz Chaim for having written the book about Lashon Hara and Shmirat HaLashon. But he was a prolific author, wrote many, many books. One is called Nidchei Yisrael. And what you said now made me think about this, so it's going to be a little bit of a digression, but it's right on point. Nidchei Yisrael is a book he wrote that was to people who were being conscripted into the Polish army, and how they were to act as Jews and what they should do when they're in the army. Chapter 8 starts off by saying that they have to do two things when they daven. Number one, their thoughts have to be derech Yerushalayim, like all of us. We have to, when we daven, either we face Yerushalayim there, or we have to, if we're not sure where Yerushalayim is, then we just have to have in mind our tefillot all go derech Yerushalayim. The second thing he says is it has to come me'omak halev. It has to come from the depths of your heart. Chafetz Chaim is telling a soldier who's going out in a Polish army, not IDF, in a Polish army, fighting some Russians or whoever it might be at the time. And he says it has to come me'omak halev. You don't think that they're going to be davening from their depths of their own heart? Of course they are. So what's his point? It's a message to everybody that whether you're in the most obvious case where you're, God forbid, a person's like in a car accident and they're lying there waiting for Hatzalah or for Mad or someone to come. And you're davening like let me hang on until they get here and all. That's obviously, it's not like, oh, hope I live. That's not your perspective. It's going to come in Mehalev, which is the same thing those people in the Polish army he was talking to. But it's to all of us too, that when we daven, we say you know, okay, and yes, myself included, we go through the words and the motions sometimes, not really stopping for a millisecond to think. So yes, it has to come Yom HaKalev, and that applies in this situation of on a daily basis. You know, this idea of coming with a clean slate the day before Yom Kippur, and it also comes to this point here of Shuv Yom Echad Lifnei Motcha, doing Shuva the day before you die. And not you, a person. I'm not going to do it now. Actually, I will. Let me do this now. There's a story in the Gemara that talks about, that gives us a little insight into this idea of Shuv Yom Echad Lifnei Motcha. It's a relatively famous story, which I know for a fact some of you already know, but I'm going to read it to you, just the ending of the story. I'll tell you the beginning. There's a man, Rebbe Elazar ben Durdia. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. He was not a nice guy. It says there was nothing he never stole. There wasn't a prostitute he never slept with. He was just not a good guy. And he hears a bat kol. He hears this heavenly voice that everyone's going to go into Gan Eden or into Shamayim, except Rebbe Elazar ben Durdia. There's another person like that. That's Elisha ben Avuya, known as Acher, right? So what does he do? So Elazar ben Durdia does the following. Halach v'yashav ben shnei harim ugvaot. Why did I take my glasses off? He says he went and he sat between two different mountains. Amar, and he said to the harim ugvaot, he said to the mountains and the hills, bakshu alai rachamim. By the way, when people quote this Gemara, they always pronounce this word wrong. It's not bikshu. Bikshu means they requested. Bakshu, it's the Lashon Tzivui. Ask God for rachamim for me. Amrulo, they said to him, Ad shanu mevakshim alecha, till before we ask for God for mercy for you, we have to ask God for our own mercy. So then he says he goes to next picture. Amar Chamal Levana. So then he turns to the moon and to the sun. Bakshu alai rachamim. He asks for mercy from them, not mercy from them, to ask God for mercy on my behalf. They said to him, before we ask for you, we have to ask for ourselves. And he goes to the stars, and he goes to the constellations. Finally, he makes the following statement. He comes to the realization that ultimately tshuva relies and only rests with me. I can be the only one who can do tshuva. And he put his head down his lap, and he started screaming and crying to the point where he died. And the Gemara says that he went straight to Gan Eden, and a little bit later it says, Yesh Adam shekoneh olamo b'sha'a achat. I've used this line before many times in other stories, that it's possible for a person to inherit the next world in 1 hour. That does not mean that I want to live my life as a bum the whole time and never do tefillah, don't do mitzvah, never do that, and then say, okay, you know what, I'm getting old, I'll do tshuva now. It doesn't work that way. But a person can be in such a position, though, where they're not such a good person, or they're not religious, or they're not keeping Torah mitzvot. This is who they are, okay? They're not yet religious, I should say. But eventually something turns around and they do tshuva. But it can even be near the end of the life. Never, never, ever give up hope. And that's part of what this mission is telling us. Do tshuva the day before you die. It's like you might think of guys 87, 91 years old. It's like, I spent the last 90 years not putting on tefillin, not davening, and you're going to tell me now to do tshuva? Really? Yeah. It's exactly what this mission is telling us. Okay. Bezrat Hashem, I think next week we are not meeting. Let me just double check. A bunch of stuff going. Next week, Thursday. Oh no, Bezrat Hashem, as of now, August 1st, right? As of now, we are. Okay, if that changes, I will let you all. Okay, have a good day and Shabbat Shalom. Toda Rabba.